met. I actually got awarded UiPath MVP 2022. I also got a trophy, but I broke it like literally 2 minutes after I opened the trophy out of the box, so I better not break this. I'll put it over here. Today's session is about collections. We will talk about arrays, lists, and dictionaries. I'll show you the difference and the best practices around how to use them, how we should not do, and how we should do. I opened up UiPath here in the background, and I advise you to do the same. You'll learn the most. My name is Jensen, and let's learn some UiPath. I'll also keep a close eye on the chat, and if you watch this video afterwards, just post your questions in the comments below. I will get back to you. I'll do my presentation and live build here. I can see that we have I have no viewers at the moment, but I'm sure that you will all show up when we started. So now I have opened up UiPath and I'm ready to start. We will build a new process. So I'll go to new project process. You can do the same. I will call it collections and then I'll click create. So the first thing that we will do is we want to see if how we can use arrays, and then we'll move on to some of the other list types. So an array can hold items of the same type, and I'll show you how to use it. So the first thing that we'll do is to drag in a sequence, and we will just be naming the sequence collections. So this one will be our outer sequence where we will place all our 3 inner sequences in. The first inner sequence, let me drag in once more, that will be arrays. So I'll give it a name. This one also makes it, these sequences makes it nice to look at. We can see what's going on. And let me just go here. And now I just looked at the chat. It appears it failed. So if you're here, just give me a shout out to make me know that this actually works. So now we have an array. To initialize an array, we go down to our variables manager. I will call this, here I'll go. Let me just do this. I will call this array of animals, like this. Here I will need to change the variable type to an array, and this one should be in your default dropdown array of t, so I do this. Then I'll say array of strings, since I want to put in animals of the type string, and I'll click OK. So now you could think that you have created it. There's no errors here in our UiPath workflow. However, if I try to run it, then nothing really happens. So, and then if I go up here, and then I want to say, I want to see what's actually in this array. So if I say array of animals, then to string, you'll see that this gives us no error either. But if I run the file, and UiPath says that object reference not set to an instance of an object. This is a common mistake. You'll see that a lot. I think I get like maybe 10 questions a month about this exception message. What's happening here is that our array is null. Null doesn't mean empty. It means nothing. The array is not there. We haven't initialized it. So, and then UiPath says, we try to write it out. We can't because it's not there. So we need to initialize it and give it a value. And let's do that. So we can either give it a value in our workflow directly, or we can go down here and do it. So to give an array a value, we will have curly brackets on, then we will have the quotation marks, and we can put in our first name. I will say dog, and let's give it like 5 different animal names. I'll say cat. Then we'll give it the name bird, snake, and maybe cow. So 5 random names, but you will use this a lot. And here the notation is that we have the curly brackets, then quotation marks and commas in between. So now when I actually run my flow, we will have no errors. However, we haven't written out these entire names, but we can write it out without errors. The array is not null anymore. This is an important concept and something that happens a lot. You will make a lot of mistakes here if you're not aware of that. And UiPath gives you no help because you can see it in your exception message. So, and now let me just see if we are actually going. So please let me know in the chat if you see this out there. I see that this says an error occurred. Hello, Vinay. Vinay says, hi, Anders, big fan, greetings from India. Vinay, can you actually see something? Because my UiPath give me an error. So please let me know in the chat if you can actually see something here on my screen. And hello, Sanjay. Big welcome to you. And please let me know here in the chat if you can actually see my UiPath. I'm a little bit unaware. I really hope so, because it would suck to give a demonstration in thin air. Anyway, let me know in the chat and I will continue. So now here we have created an array. We could, for example, we could target a different separate item like bird. And to do so, I drag in a right line. And then I write my array of animals. A good tip to do that is to press Control space. That will open up intelligence. And now I have my array of animals. This one is highlighted, so you can just press Tab. That will put in the animals. Let's say that we wanted the bird. You could intuitively think that the bird would be named tree, like here. So 1, 2, 3. But an array, like every other thing almost in programming, is zero indexed. That means that the first item is 0, and 1, 2. So to get the bird, we will have to do the 2 in the parentheses. So we can target different items of this array. Let me try to run it. There you go. If we go down to output, then we can see that we have the bird printed out. If you cannot find your output, let me just also close the variables manager, then you can find it down here on the left, bird. So now we can write out one separate item of our array. So to change a value in our array, that's also possible. Let's say that we wanted to change the birth, then we wanted to have an assign in. So I'll do this. And so we are saying that we're giving a new value to our array of animals 2. That one was our birth. I'm just copying down here and pasting it in here. Then I want to give it a new value. And let's give it the value horse, like this. And so what we want to do here is that we want to run it and see that we can actually change values. So sorry, if I go down here to output, you can see that we have now changed the value to horse. So what if I want to add a value to this array? So let us change the assign and let's just inspect the assign before we add values. So we have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to add a 6th item that will be 5. So if I change this one here and say 5, and remember, then the birth will still be 3rd because we don't change it. But look what's happening now. And this says that the index was outside the bounds of the array. This means that we are trying to change an index that is not there. And that's why the error comes. That is, of course, not really nice. It's a classic mistake that often happens. You can't add values to an array. Hence, it's very limited. I will not recommend using array. We will see better alternatives later in this session. But you might want to use it sometimes because it's very, very easy. So we cannot add items to an array. The index is simply not there. So an array is defined whenever we initialize it with values. We do it down here in the variables manager. So if we wanted to add a 5th item, or a 6th item actually, but at the place 5, then we will need to do it down here like that. And then let's just change this assign again, because now we will just write out whatever it's in the 5th place. And we can write it out. So 2 classic mistakes. And let us just repeat what the classic mistake was. If we try to target an array that is null, we will get an error. UiPath will not tell us what the actually error is, but we haven't assigned any values to an array. We're trying to target a null value or null valuable. And also, you cannot add items to an array at runtime. That means when the robot runs, but we will do it initially. So so now we are adding it here. And so if we wanted to change this array, we could also do it in an assign up here. And it will be very bad for performance reasons. We will create a very, very bad practice robot. It's not recommended doing so. In 2 minutes, I'll show you how we can improve that, how we can jump away from arrays and use a much smarter variable types. So to end this, let's say that we have an array here. Then we can iterate through each one of the array, the elements in the array. So I'll say for each, then I'll scroll a little bit down in control, drag in a for each. So here I can say for each item, I can rename this. This is just a name for reference. Then I can say for each item in, again, control space. It's not here. So our array of animals doesn't show up. So let us see if we can change the scope. And we cannot find it. You can see that this gives us an error. This is another classic mistake. You can see that we have this array sequence. And when I go down to variables, you can see that our array is only defined in the arrays sequence. So what we want to do is to drag this for each up here. And when I go down here, press Control Space, you'll have it again, array of animals. So to write these animals out one by one, it could be that you have a process where you wanted to use like program names and want to do something with each program, like opening or close it. We'll get back to that. So let me drag in a right line. Then I can just say item, because we already have strings here in the animals. And let me just drag it up here. And now we have two for each, so I'll just delete one of them. And here we want to change, and now we have another error. This is shown, that's why the live builds are so nice. We see what's actually going on. Here we have an error. It says that we need to change object to string. So I'll go and mark the for each, then I go to the type argument and change it to string. So now we are, let me just do this. And here, let me just see what's actually going on. We will jump away from this. Arrays is very bad for, let me just do this and see what's going on. Item is not declared. Well, we just have items up here. Let me change this to animal. So I will say for each animal in array animals, then I'll say animal. What is going on here? Well, we should be able to refer to this for each animal up here. And let me just see what's actually went on here. So for each animal, we are writing out for each animal in this animal. Well, and now you can actually see that we don't have our array of animals here. Oh, that is exciting. Well, we'll just, and I can't really delete this for each. So this might be a mistake here in a UiPath. We found a bug. If I right click here and I click delete, the activity is not deleted. Well, what we do here is that we go to home, we close it, we open it up again. So sometimes these bugs happens now and there. You can see that we can actually not delete them. So let's try to create it from scratch. So I'll drag in the for each here. I'll say for each item in, and I'll make sure that now you can see that I can see my array. So then I'll say for each item in array of animals, then I want to write out this item or animal. So now we are not getting any mistakes, and I think we can also delete these, and I can rename this to animal. I'm not sure what went wrong here with UiPath. Maybe we can send that to UiPath and see that it's shown that there was an error here. Now you can see I have dog, cat, bird, snake, cow, horse. I have it all written out. These live builds are nice for me because in a bit of a pressure here, you can see that we can solve errors, but it's also for you. It shows you how you can solve errors on the fly. I made 2 errors purposely. That was with the array, how we initialized it and how we tried to add an item to it. But this was definitely not part of the plan, but somehow UiPath had a bug and I had to restart it and then it worked. So that's it. That's it from the array. And as I said, arrays usually not the thing that we want to use. We want to use lists. They're very similar to an array. It's just that we can manipulate a list at runtime. We can add items to it. Let me just take a break and then I will have some coffee. I already had coffee all over, but cheers. It's really nice. And Sanjay says hello. Vinjay says, yes, we are able to see you. So now we saw this workflow with arrays, and I told you not to use arrays. And I will show you a better practice to use, that is lists. So if I just drag in another sequence below here, I use these sequences. We have this outer sequence called collections. And I use these to just keep a better track of my workflow. So it's like commenting our workflows or giving them better names. Always do that. So now we are on to the list. And in case you like the stream out there, you can really help me a lot just by attending like you do here, participate in chat, or give it a thumbs up. If you give this video a thumbs up, that will improve the reach. And it's possible for me to live out the stream by creating videos for you here. It's really a dream, so thanks a lot for everyone watching. Now we have a list. A list is very much like an array. It can also hold a number of values of another type, and we'll now create a list of strings again. So what I want to do is I want to create the same list as we did up here, and then I'll show you how easy it is to access the items, how to add to it, and why you should use a list. I already told you, but so let me go up to the array scope and just copy this value. I'm very lazy. You could, of course, we are adding them to our lists in a few seconds. Feel free to write it manually. I try to avoid manual work. So now I'm in the list scope. That is very important. You need to be able to click the lists. Then I go to variables. So here we have defined no variables. And that makes sense because we have an array up here in the other sequence. So if I go in here, then I'll call this list of animals. The variable type, that will be of the type list. You won't be able to see it here in the variable type dropdown. It's not a standard one. That's also why some people will use the array. It's easily accessible. So for us to use it, we need to click browse for type, and then I'll search for list. I need to go down to the system collection a bit below here. So take that one here under MS Corlib 4.0. That's usually the variables that you want to use under System.Collections.Generic list of T. So we want a list of strings. You can apply all other variable types to your list. It just have to be the same type. I want to have the list of strings. So I click this drop down up here. Again, I mark this list of T, click this drop down, and I add a string up here. I'll click OK. So now I have created my list and I need to initialize it. And we will do that by going to the default value and write new list of, and then we'll say, what is this? What's the type that there's in this list? And that is string, like this. So now we have initialized it. And I think just to make it a bit more clean, I will collapse this array and have this list here. So if I try to run it, and I think I will also Control D or disable activity, this array, just so we ignore it, it won't show up in our output console. So now if I try to run it again, everything works fine. We haven't done nothing. We have initialized it. So let's assign the value to it. We have these animals value that we want to assign. The reason that we type in new list of string is to initialize it, so it's not null anymore. Otherwise, it would give us the same error as we saw in the array. So now if I go over here, I'll say a new list of string, then I'll say from, and then I can add my items I want to add to my list. So if I do this, that one's 1, 2, 3. Let's delete the horse and let's see that we can actually add items to a list during runtime. That's when our robot runs. So now I'm just doing this. And if I try to run it, you'll see that we run without mistakes. Similarly, if I wanted to print out the bird, that is still 0 index a list, so that'll be 0, 1, 2. I'll print out this bird. And to do so, to use an item from a list, I will say control space, then I will say list of animals, and again, I just say parentheses 2. Since it's strings, this works in a right line that requires a string input. So now you will see that I can print out the bird. That's it. So I promised you to say that I wanted to show you that we can add items to a list during runtime. That is very handy because we will create a lot of flows that requires this. So what I want to do is to go over to activity. This is very important. You will use this a lot when you progress a bit. I'll use the invoke method. So let me just add it here. So I will, the target type, that is null. So the target object, that is the list that we are trying to add to. And here I will just control space again. Easiest, I won't make any typing errors. I just press tab. And the method name, that is add, like this. And what I need to do is that I need to say what is going into this list. To do so, make sure you are clicked on the invoke method. Then go over to parameters, collection. Here we will create an ingoing argument. It's simply just to say what is going into our list. So it is of the direction in, it's going inside into our list. The type, that will be string, fine. And we added horse for before. Let's add dragon. Why not? Then I can click OK. And now we're printing out bird, but let's try to print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The sixth item, that's number 5. That is the item that we're trying to add up here to see that it actually works. Again, if you're not used to the 0 index, it's very easy. It's just that the first item is named 0, then first 1, 2, 3, so it'll be one behind what you're used to. That is quite clever. Let me run it and let me inspect the chat. We'll go to output and we have now added the dragon to the list. So use the invoke method. And so why ever use an array in UiPath? Well, you shouldn't. I will definitely advocate for always using lists over arrays. Why do people still use arrays? Well, I think it's easier. If you saw here, we needed to write a bit of a code, new list of string from, and then we had the same as in array, and it's a bit more complicated to use the invoke method, but very, very easy. Everything is straightforward. It's also habits. Like if you always use an array, you're not inclined to use a list, but if you haven't used a list, try creating this example and use it in your robots. Now let me go back to Restream. Education says, hi sir, I'm a big fan of you. Thanks a lot, Education. I'm a big fan of you and all other people's watching. You make it possible for me to make a living out of this, so Thank you, education, and everyone else watching. Sanjay have a good question. Thank you, Sanjay. Is there any scope of using lists of or an array of booleans? I mean, any use case? So I have to think. So what is being asked here is that we should we use a list of booleans like true, 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 false? Well, maybe if we have some default settings that we wanted to change. I cannot remember. I created a robot where I used a list or an array of booleans, but maybe one of you watching can join in here. So by all means, if you need it, use it, but that depends on the input to our process description, what we want to have in here. So again, I'm really happy that you're actually watching here, and let's move on to dictionaries. And what a dictionary is simply just like a dictionary that you are used to see. That is that you look something up and then you give an explanation. For example, in a real-time dictionary, like an English dictionary, you look a word up and then you'll have a definition. Same thing here in UiPath. You look something up and then you'll give the definition. What we saw here is that we have array and lists. They are very useful when we want to loop through all the values in. When lists, when we want to add values to the list during runtime, very, very useful. A dictionary is typically used, for example, for a config file where we read an Excel sheet that we update with config things. We'll see that in a few minutes. And then we can use those values by making lookups when we use our robots. It's very, very simple. And let me show you. So now I create a new sequence. We have no more questions. I will move on. And I think they are good questions. So what I'll do here is that I will just Control D or right click and then disable. So I can Control D, that will comment this one out. Let me do this. So now we will have a dictionary sequence. We will see how that plays out. So dictionaries or dictionary, and we will be creating it here. It is key value pairs. So that is a concept that you will understand, but think of a dictionary. You have a key, that's the word you look up, and then the value, that will be the definition. Similarly to, for example, I'm not sure where I have my phone. Here, I have my phone. I have an address book here. So if I look up like a name, that could be Gunnar. I look up Gunnar, my friend, and then I can see his phone number. Then the name will be the key and the phone number will be the value. We look up a key, get a value back. That's how it works. Let's see why that is clever. So we will create a new sequence and then we will be creating a dictionary. Make sure you are in the dictionary here and make sure you stay in this session because we will be making a few use cases after we went through these definitions. We will see why they're clever. We will see how we can apply them to our real world projects. Anyway, we have a dictionary. So I'll say dic, and this notation, some of you ask me what this is. And there are different types of notation. I always use this where we say something about the variable. We'll start with capital letter and then we give it a name. So I'll say dic and then I'll say animals like this. So we need to find a dictionary here in the variable type. And again, it's not here per default. So I click browse for types. Say dictionary. Again, go to MS Core Lib. Make sure you pick the one under System.Collections.Generic. You can see here that we need a key and a value. You provide them just as we provided it to our list. So I will say string. Now I want to make a dictionary where I will give ages to my animals. So, and we could of course keep them in string, but let's for fun make a string and then the value will be of the type integer. Integer are whole numbers, that is all the numbers negative and non-negative and zero. That is not decimal numbers. So if I do this. So now I have created my dictionary, and again, similarly, I need to initialize it to not be null. A null dictionary, if we try to refer to that, it will give us an error like we saw with the array. So here I will say new, and again, we do it, the notation is the exact same thing as we did with the list, so it's very, very easy. So I'll say new dictionary, Then I'll say off, and then I just need to say what variable types is in our dictionary, and we can see it over here. We have string and integer. So what I do here is I say off string, then comma, then I'll say integer like this. So now I have initialized it. You can also give it some values. We can first we will be getting it here, and then we will try to add them during runtime and refer to them during runtime. So again, just like the notation from lists, I will say new dictionary of string integer from, and then I will provide the values that I want to go in. As I said, we can also have values going in at runtime. For example, we could read an Excel sheet with 2 columns in. We will see that in the use case in 10 minutes. So make sure you stay. I'll show you how we can use it in real well. So now we're saying what is going in. And what we will be doing here is that we will have these, let me move the mouse, we'll have these curly brackets. Then we will have the key value pairs. That will be the animals, the ages of our animals. So again, let me make some spaces so we can see what's going on. Then I'll say for the first item here in my dictionary, we'll have curly brackets again, like this. So that will be dog. And then we'll have a comma. And now we need to give it, we want to give the dog an age. So I can say 4. And you can see that the arrow disappears. Remember that we defined that this should be an integer. We did that here and here. So this needs to go in as an integer. That means not quotation marks. So I'll say 4 like this. So now we have added one item to our dictionary. Let's add another one so we have a little one to play with. So I'll say comma. Then I'll say, let's have a cat as well. And let me give it the value of 6. So we have a dog age 4 and a cat age 6. So a really simple dictionary, but we can use it to look something up. So if I click save here, and again, we can look up, now we're looking up a name here, a string. You could of course look, if you have an integer, you can look that up, but usually I just look up these strings. So if I want to know the cat's name, this could also be a setting in our config that we'll see later on, but now I just want to get the cat's age. Again, so I want to look up this cat. So what I want to do is that I want to find a right line. And here I am referring to the dictionary of animals. So I press Control space, I tab it, dic animals like this. And we wanted to look up the cat. So, and here you can see that what we're going to do here, this actually helps us a lot. You might have seen this pops up and not sure what it is. Here it says that our dictionary is string and integer. We need a key, a string. That one was our cat. So we give it a string key. Oh, sorry, why did I write dog when I say cat? So I give it the cat. And so now we're looking that up. But you can also see that it returns an integer here. And we cannot write out integers in the right line. So you might have guessed it. We do the toString to write out the age of the cat. Let me try to run it, and then we will go to output. And now we have written out the age of the cat. So it's very, very easy to refer to dictionaries. It's something that we'll also use in the REFramework. Give me more coffee. It's early days here in Denmark. It's it's 10:30. What time is it at yours? Let me know in the chat, and I will check the chat now. So Amir says, can we print IEnumerable of matches in a single string, all the values? Amir, let me just show this question. We will also, matches is something that we will get from regex when we try to extract text. That will be the topic of the next lesson. So I will, because we are not really having the but yes we can, but we are not covering IEnumerables here. That is sort of a list that we're using here. So we will not be covering that, Amir. And I hope that you will join the next session. Send me a message on LinkedIn or email, and I will send you the link to that session, or just keep an eye on this channel. And again, we also Sanjay says, what's the difference between a list and dictionary? And usually a list is one-dimensional. We have items of one type, and a dictionary is something that you are going to look up, like we saw here. And we'll also see in a few minutes, I'll show you some use cases on how to apply them. It makes much more sense than just seeing this rambling here or presentation. Kieran says it's 2:04 p.m. in India. Hey, Kieran, and welcome to the stream. It means a lot that all you people write here in the chat. That helps me a lot. So now, enough of the break. Let's see two simple use cases, simplifications of how we can apply lists and dictionaries. We won't cover arrays. We did that in the beginning of this video, but as I told you, it's best practice to use lists. So I recommend you do that. And let me just comment this one out as well. I'll do that. And now, so this one just means that these gets ignored, and we will be creating a new sequence for the first use case. This will be a simple list use case. Let's say that, let me do this. Let's say that we want to close programs. So let me open Excel. I don't hope I have any confidential info in here. I don't have that. I shared with Stine, which is my wife. I have this company with her. And so I want to close this Excel. There's a lot of things that we can do. We can terminate it, we can close a window, or we can kill the process. Usually that looks like this. So I kill the process. I can give the process a name. So if I go down here, and the name of the Excel process, remember to have it in without the extension, that will be Excel, like this. So, so I can now close Excel. Look what's going on here. So I have my Excel down here, and we close Excel. But imagine that in a robot, we want to close several applications. It could also be that we wanted to open it, but now we're closing it. Then we could create a list where we put in all the process name that we wanted to close or kill here. So what we will do is that we'll go down to variables, and then we will assign a new list. So I'll say list of apps. Those ones are the apps that we want to close. And let me just open up some random apps. Excel was good. Let's take the Edge and Notepad, one of my favorites, like this. So now I have 3 apps that I want to use: Excel, Edge, and Notepad. Of course, I could have a lot more apps that I wanted to use. So here I create a list with the names of the executables for those apps. So here that will be the type list. And you can see that we already have used the list. So I just go down here, System.Collections.Generic list, here, list of strings. So now I can just apply them just as we did before. So I'll say new, then I'll say list of string, and then I'll say what values do I want to have going inside here. That is the applications that I want to use. So here I'll say Excel. This, and the executable of Edge, that is MS Edge. You don't need capital here. You can, this one will do. So I can have MS Edge, and the Notepad in this MS Edge. You can Google these executables if you want to close other sort of programs in your robot. So I'll just do this. But now these are the 3 applications that I want to close in my robot workflow. I can now iterate through this list and close them one by one. This looks like this. So again, I'll find a for each, and I drag it in here in my sequence. So now I drag this kill process up here, like this. And so I'll say for each item in control space, list of apps. So I want to iterate through my list of apps. You can see now it automatically changed the argument to string. It saw that my list was of the type string, and this one got updated up automatically over here in the type argument. Here, this item is just for reference. I can rename it if I wanted. Let's just call it for each app in list apps. So then I just go down here and refer to the app up here. So now I'm iterating through each one of the items in the list and closing in one by one. So Excel, Edge, and Notepad. Let us try to run it. Like this, all our application closed just by using this list and iterating through it. Of course, you could create much more advanced flows, but this could be one way to use a list. And yes, you could use an array here in this case as well. So if you really want to stick to it, well, it's not completely wrong. It's just better to use a list. So yeah, get used to it. And let me just check my stream here. No new people joining in. A lot of people gave this video a thumbs up. 19 people. Thanks a lot. We will be continuing with another use case. What I want to show you now is to how to use a dictionary. I will use it for a config. And usually we do that, for example, in our REFramework. There's a lot of ways to handle a config, but the most simple one is to create an Excel sheet with the values that we want to have stored as a config. We can easily change that and use it in our robot, so we can use it dynamically. So I think I want to, let me just also do this. I also want to comment this one out here. So I'll do this. So now we are having the last sequence. This is very important. So make sure you stick, if you don't know how to use a config, a dictionary with a config, this is for you. So then I'll say config use case like this. So we want to, over here in the project, I want to have a data folder. That's where I store an Excel sheet. The intuition here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to read an Excel sheet with config data and use that in my robot with a dictionary. So, and that's the way you do it in the REFramework per default. And so what we need to do here is that we need to create a config sheet. So I go to my desktop, new Microsoft Excel worksheet. I'll call this config like this, and I'll open it here. And the sheet is called arc_it. That is Danish. I'm not sure how to change this per default, so it says sheet 1. That will be a bit more easy, but that's okay. So I'll call this settings like this. And then I'll create a simple table. There will only be 2 settings here, but it will work if we had 20 settings. So what I do here is that I'll say name and value. For example, one common thing could be to store our orchestrator queue. So if I say orchestrator queue name here, and then I can give that a value. And let me just call it something, and let us call it the name of the last commenting user here. So that will be Sanjay, and we will call the queue name Sanjay. Oh, let's call it Anders, just so people won't get confused. So this is the queue name. And Sanjay says, can you make a session on using Invoke Method activity? Yeah, we covered it a bit here in the list, but I could make a video around that. Anyway, Sanjay, write me and I will help you from here. We also need like an Excel folder path. Imagine that in our robot we have data that we want to use, for example, data for our process. This data could fluctuate, or the placement of the folder that could be, for example, on some PCs on the desktop, sometimes it gets moved to another tier. Then we want to easily update it here in our config sheets and give it a value. I will just create another sheet here. So I will say Microsoft Excel worksheet. This will just be a blank one, but I'll use that. So if I shift right click, copy as path, and I go to the value and just paste in the path of this Excel sheet. So now if I move this, imagine that there will be customer data in or whatever, then I can easily just change it in here to another path. So that is handy. So now we have this one here, and I can just, it is safe per default. I can just close it, and then we have our config. The config we want to use in our UiPath workflow. So I'll go over here. Then I'll be creating a data folder. We could just drag it. Let me just find, where did the config go? that disappear? Well, let me just do this. Add, and I'll say data. I'm not sure where our config go. Let me just try to find it in my folder here. No, it should be on our desktop. It just disappeared. So yeah, it is here. But what I want to do is I want to move it to the data. So each time that we are using, we are running our robot, we can just call the data folder. So I will be dragging it. I'm not sure where it went, but now it is in my data folder. I could refer to that here. Oh, let me just close down this one over here, the computer again. It is gone. Very weird. And it's not on the second computer, but that's fine. So now I have, what I did here was we created a config and we created a random Excel sheet with data. Now we want to refer to that. So what I want to do first is to create a dictionary variable where I can read my config to. So I'll just say dictionary config like this. It will be of the type string. I will be looking up the name and then getting the value back. So again, a key value pair. What I do here is now I can find my dictionary. In case you cannot find your dictionary, you need to browse for types like we did before. I can show you here. Dictionary of T key value. So this will also be of the type string, like this. I'll do this. Again, we will initialize it, but this time we won't add any data to it per default. We will do it at runtime when our robot runs. We will start the robot and then we will add values to our dictionary. So here I'll just say new, and I'll say dictionary of, and we will say string like this. So we will just initialize it and then we'll give it values up here. So I will just be closing this. Now we want to read the config sheet because those are the values that we want to add to our dictionary. So we can call those during the entire robot. Imagine that this robot had a lot of state machines where we pass data from each one of the states. It's nice that we could just refer to our config one time. So I go to activities, and now we'll find a read range. We could either use the Excel ones or the workbook. The workbook is quite easy, so let's just take that. So the workbook path, we will click this folder here, then we'll move into our data. That's where I moved my config sheet. So then I click this one here. So now I need to say, what sheet name do I need to read? I will use the settings. That's what I called my sheet. Then we just need to output it to a data table so we can iterate through each item and add it to our dictionary. To do so, press Ctrl K like this. Then I'll say dictionary config. Oh, we already created it, so of course it was DT config. So it was a data table. We're not trying to add these values when we read it from Excel to a dictionary. We add it to our data table, of course. And then we iterate to the data table and add it to the config. Again, I love these live builds here. It sharpens my game, but it's also showing you how I make a lot of mistakes doing everyday programming. That's common. You will do it as well. Don't get discouraged to that. Just move on. Make all these mistakes. You will learn a lot from them when you try to solve and check what's going on. This was, of course, not really big. So now we want to read this config sheet here, this data table, into our dictionary. It looks like this. So I'll find a for each row in data table here and drag it here. So for each current row in my DT config, that is the DT config, that is the config sheet that we have up here in a data table format. The data table looks exactly like the Excel one. Now we can read it into our dictionary. To do so, I will find an assign. It's up here in favorites. Just drag it in here. So first we'll say, on the left side, we'll say, will be our key. So we'll say, what key do we want to add something to? And then the right side, that will be our value. So what I will be doing here, that will look like this. So again, control space to activate the intelligence. I'll go down to, because now I want to add to the dic config. So I'll just scroll down here. do this. So what do I want to add? Well, I want to add something from the current row. I want to add from each one of the current rows, that is row in my data tables. Then I want to say I'm in a current row, then I want whatever. So for the key, I want whatever is in the name column. Remember, we created the config sheet with a name column and a value column. So for the key, that will be the name. So I'll say parentheses. Then to target the current row, have this intelligence on, I'll say current row. And this is very, very hard for you to read. So what I will do is go up here to the three dots and have it up here. It's a bit more easy to read the expression. So I'll say current row. Then I can refer to the column that is item. And then I will say, what is the column that I'm trying to read in the current row? Well, that was the name. That is the key. So then I'll say name like this. Current row item name out here. And then I will say, I want to convert this to a string since it's an Excel object, or it's from the data table, but comes from Excel. So it's an object, and then parentheses end. That is, so what's happening here is that I want to add a key to my dictionary. The key is just the thing that I got out from this data table. And so everything you'll see inside this data table is nothing but a key. So this is a key in string format. We define the dictionary to be of the type string string. So I'm just adding the key to it. Then I can click OK, the error disappears. Now we can give it a value. And this one will also be of the type string because our dictionary needs a value of the type string. And here we call the column value. So if I go over here, then I can say control space again. I can say current row, and then again item, and I will refer to the value column. Again, I just need to have it to string like this. So now I am referring to the value column, whatever in there. That could be, you remember we had a name, that could be the Excel folder path, and then the value was the actual path, C: Anders Jensen, OneDrive, whatever, like this. So now we're saying for each row in the data table, we're adding them to the config. So it's not only one row, it's everything we have in our config. I only have two, but this will work if you had 100 lines. Now we can use these key value pairs in our robot. So if I go to project again, then I can open up the config. So I can call these names and then get the value back. It's very, very clever because then I can program my robot to just use the Excel folder path. And whenever something from the business side, they say, well, we changed this, then we can just change it here. Or we can change the orchestrator queue name or whatever setting we have in our settings sheet. So I'll be referring to the Excel folder path. So if I do that, I will just use a write line, but you can use it to open up an Excel sheet. You can use it for everything. So let me just show you here. Go to the write line here. And to target elements in our dictionary, we do just as we did before with the animals. So I'll say dic config, and then we want to give it the key. You can see it here. We give it the key and we get a string back because our dictionary was of the type string string. So the key, well, in quotation marks, that was Excel folder path like this. So now let me just recap what we did here. We created a config sheet, then we read it into a data table. We iterated through each one of the rows of these data tables and added the key value, the name and value as key value pairs into our dictionary. Now we can use that dictionary to get the data out. So we call the key and get the value back. It looks like this. I could have cheated a bit and prepared something for you from the TV kitchen, but I think it's very, very nice to see you, to show you how to build it from scratch. So now if I go down to my output, this one gives my Excel path. So I could have used that to open up this very Excel sheet wherever it was on my computer. It just needs to be right in the config sheet. So that one was handy. Again, if you like what you see, you can help me a lot by commenting, giving it a thumbs up, or just be here as you are. Thanks a lot for that. A lot of you have questions, and what I will recommend here is my Discord. We are now, let me see, 3,000 125 people on my Discord. It's actually not mine, it's everyone's. Everyone can comment, ask questions. So if you want to join, the link is in the description below. And let me show you some of the nice channels, what you should do. So you're getting welcomed here, and then you need to go to set your role, react to the emojis that you want access to. For example, you probably want access to the UiPath, then you just click this emoji here. If you also want access to Power Automate, then you click the Power Automate. Then you get access to the help channel. For example, this UiPath help channel. Here you can post in all your questions. You can see here, Gunnar, it's a very nice person. He helps with regex. Gunnar is also very skilled. We are a lot of skilled developers helping each other here. You can just go join it by clicking the link in the description. It's free, totally free. It will be free forever. We're here to help each other. Let me move it. Then I'm going to my stream here, and it's really nice to see you all here. And NH says, is there a way to convert this data table to a dictionary using a link method? Yes, we can do that, and I will definitely have a link session as well. And then, so thanks a lot for everyone joining today. I will be covering every topic in the UiPath certification exam. So this one was collections. It was a quick run through, so you don't have to watch 4 hours of presentation and videos, but it shows you how to use each one of the array, lists, and dictionaries, which will be topics in the exam. And what I want to show you next will be regex. There was a question about regex, which I think is great. And so if you